how the free software needs a funding that is a long-term funding. I'm looking in that direction because I want to introduce here on stage the next speaker that has already been introduced by Jordan Maris. He is Alexander Sander, the EU Public Policy Program Manager at the Free Software Foundation Europe. So the stage is yours. We know you have a great presentation and we are happy to hear you.
Yeah, thanks for the kind introduction, also from Jordan before, and thanks for having me again. So last year, I was having a talk here where I talked about the cut of NGI funding, and out of this talk, I worked in the last year on the question how we can get to a secured long-term funding for free software. So, as said, I'm working for the Free Software Foundation Europe, so we are a charity that empowers users to control technology, and part of our work is to also think about these questions of like funding, Cyber Resilience Act, procurement, so on and so forth. I guess you are all familiar with the concept of free software. It comes with 4 freedoms: to use, study, share, and improve, right? So you can use the software for any purpose without any restrictions. You can study the code. It's transparent, can be analyzed by anyone. You can share it with, without any limitations, and also here it's important that the price doesn't matter, so that's important for the funding topic. And also you are free to improve the software, or you can also say modify it, you can even make it worse, but however you want to do it better. So, and these 4 freedoms also like help you to achieve digital sovereignty. They help you to follow European Union law when it comes to data protection, for example. It normally also helps European SMEs or micro-enterprises. So if we look at the European software market, in particular on free software, then we mainly find SMEs there. It helps you to foster innovation, and ultimately you don't have any vendor lock-ins. So there's a good reason to invest in free software. And the question is like, how do we do this? Where do we do this? We have seen from Jordan's talk that the Cyber Resilience Act plays a role, but there's more. And let's first of all check like how is this funding organized at the moment. So we have, when we look at the European Union, many pilot projects. So it's a loose combination of like programs, pilot projects mainly. For example, the FOSSA or the FOSSA 2 program, where hackathons were started to, for example, make the VLC player more secure. Also, we had the NGI funding. Gabriel will talk about the NGI funding in the next talk as well a bit. There we have seen a cut of funding, so that is what I talked about last year. So there was a dedicated part for free software in the NGI funding, which was cut. And now we just rely on sayings by the European Commissions that they still want to invest in free software, that they still want to take care of this. But there's nothing in writing, and it's not set in stone. We took part in a grant proposal for this year's NGI grant, but it's, as I said, it's unsure if we get it. Also, we see that there are more and more OSPOs arising. We have one in the European Union. We have something like an open source strategy in the European Union. We see these things in member states as well. But all of this is not coming with funding. So what they did in the European Union, for example, is just to pick some people who were already there working on free software and call them now you are the OSPO. Also, we see some initiatives in member states. A very prominent one is probably the Sovereign Tech Agency, formerly known as Sovereign Tech Fund in Germany, where they try to invest in security of free software projects. We see stack debates happening in member states, but also on a European level, so where they want to combine things. And call this then a stack, so it's also a bit unclear what a stack ultimately should be, but we also see that software plays a role there. Also, we see more and more code repositories, so where in particularly administrations are trying to share free software projects they procured or that they came up with by themselves. And as we have seen in the talk by John just before, we have the Cyber Resilience Act, where we have the stewards and also the attestation question. So there are, on the one hand, some loose activities. On the other hand, we see laws and other initiatives, but nothing is combined. There's not really a strategy behind. There's not really something long-term in it. So it could be there the one day, it could be cut the next day. So it's not very sustainable, and this means everything is a bit vague, and this is normally not good for markets and also not good for security, for core infrastructure, or innovation. Also, we have something like the Interoperable Europe Act. So this is a law where administrations are supposed to work together on software solutions dedicated for administrations. And the question is, so what do we do with this? So we have all of these loose combinations. We have initiatives, strategies, but not really, for example, a dedicated budget for something. So the very first thing is basically the Cyber Resilience Act, where we are debating now that we need funding. So it's pretty clear that all of this whole Steward concept and all of this whole attestation concept won't work out if we don't throw money off this. The question is, where does the money come from? What are the criteria for this? And so on and so forth. Also, we have procurement. I mean, the Free Software Foundation Europe is running a campaign which you might know of since, I don't know, how many years, Johannes, do we run this now? 8, 9, 10 years? Yeah, so it's a public money, public code campaign, right? So where we ask people or administrations to release everything what they procure when it's software under a free software license. And the interesting bit on the procurement is that the European Union is about to start a procurement reform. This month we expect an impact assessment by the European Union on procurement, where they will talk about strategic procurement. And the question is, how does this strategic procurement look like when they talk then about something like digital sovereignty? So everything is filled with buzzwords, but not really with content, not with clear criteria. So procurement could or is also a source on how we could and should invest in free software. There will be also a talk tomorrow by my colleague Johannes on the procurement reform and the procurement update. And also ultimately we have budgets, so we have budgets in the European Union, so we have a European Union budget, but also in the member states. And I also do believe we should have ultimately one day budget lines dedicated for free software in those budgets. So this is something sustainable, this is something where we can explain how money should be spent. So this is all missing at the moment, but something I do believe that should be introduced. Also, we have funding schemes already, or like also something like Horizon Europe or Digital Europe, where the European Union invests in digital something, right? So the Digital Europe program, for example, was introduced after the COVID crisis, so when everyone understood digital might be something what we need, and it also needs to be secured. We want to have control over technology. And whenever we talk about this, right, so we end up with free software. Then we have these stack debates, as said. So there is, the European Union is debating a stack. So basically, when the NGI money was cut, then it might be also a good reason to say they now want to invest more into the stack, so it shouldn't be these loose projects they fund, but rather it should contribute to such a stack. But at the same time, they don't know how the stack should look like, so it's a bit difficult to understand what they really want to do there. But also we have these stack debates in the parliament, also in member states. So just recently the latest German government came up with a proposal for a German stack. And I also do believe we should make sure that we don't end up with like national silos here, but that we rather have something European or even global. That doesn't mean that we have one solution for everything, but that we really have alternatives and that we make use of those four freedoms and collaborate, work together. And I do believe that, for example, the European Union should like basically stimulate these activities and make sure that whenever member states are coming up with those initiatives, that they collaborate on this and don't end up in national silos. And this also means we need to think about criteria. So how do we want to spend money when we talk about strategic procurement or the stacks or whatever? And I think the very first one is that we want to stimulate these activities and not just subsidize. So that's a very important thing. So we want to go into the market and stimulate the market. We want to stimulate cooperation. We want to stimulate that people are working together, that they collaborate, and as said, make use of the four freedoms, and don't just like throw money on companies and hope that they come up with something. Also, it should somehow benefit citizens, so us. So that's, I think, a very important criteria, but also administrations and also markets alike. So this could be security, that could be core infrastructure, criteria like participation. Is it following European law? How does it help to fulfill administrative tasks? And ultimately, also, we want to invest in innovation, right? So we do not want to preserve what we have, but we also want to look forward and come up with better solutions tailored to our needs. And then ultimately, we want to strengthen control, right? So it's not just that we want to buy something, which is maybe good or not. We also want to have control over the technology we are using, and that's why, again, we need to build on those four freedoms to use, study, share, and improve or modify. This means, first of all, again, we have this public money, public code campaign, so we can work with procurement. So if we put these criteria in the procurement rules, this could definitely help in order to end up with free software. But also we have the market, and this means I do believe that everyone who benefits from free software should also contribute. And this means administration, but also market players alike. And with market players, I do not mean the probably most obvious ones that also like come up with free software, but in particular those who use free software, but that we don't see, and that are kind of like free riders. I think about banking, insurance companies, stuff like this. So people that are not like in the tech sector, but also benefiting from free software. And those should also contribute to such funds, so it should not be only public money, but also private money. And the question is like, how could we go there? So one of my proposals is to come up with something like a Nutri-score for free software, so that we can see how companies invest in free software, so that we can have a tracking, that we can do a bit of naming and shaming, and so that we can bring in some transparency in all of this funding games. There are companies who do a 1% giving, so this could also be a solution, right? So, and ultimately, funds are also something which might help. There are a couple of debates going on. I think all of these debates are important and useful. I also do not believe that there is this one and only solution to get there. I do believe it should be a mix ultimately, but most important it is for all of these things that are long-term, that are secured, sustainable, right? So that we don't end up in situations like with the NGI funding, where the Commission can just cut the funding from one day to another, and then these projects are running out of money. In order to do so, you can help us, you can support us with like reaching out to people. Sometimes we do calls on like how you can take part in consultations, for example. So this is very helpful. You can sign our public money, public code campaign. This is where we inform you about these activities. This is also related to funding. Also, you can support us with a donation so that we can take part in meetings with decision makers. So just like last week, I was in Brussels having discussions with the European Commission on precisely these kind of fundings and funding structures. So this is very important that we not just only are here around at these conferences, maybe talking to us. So we have to go out and talking to the others, in particular decision makers. Also it helps us to do media activities and also talk about these topics. And now we have 46 seconds left for questions.
Thank you, first of all.
So 35 seconds.
There is two questions, so we will be...
A woman first, I would say.
The microphone is coming. There.
Very quickly, do you have a timeline for anything concrete?
The timeline is, this is also a very long-term thing. I mean, the Cyber Resilience Act will be implemented by 2027, so until then we need to have answer to the steward and attestation question. This also helps us to debate all of this. The procurement reform, as said, in November we have the impact assessment to be released, so that means the next, basically in this term we will have a procurement reform, which then also have to be implemented with guidance and stuff like this. So I'd say roughly gut feeling 4 years until we have the rules. And the NGI debate is something which is happening right now. So everything is happening more or less now and will take for the next 4, 5, 6 years, depending on how successful we are.
Thank you.
Very quickly, just briefly, what do you see as the biggest obstacle to public money, public code? Your experience, just, I don't know. Is it companies? Is it government? Is it?
So I do believe it's mainly about fixing loopholes. So often this public procurement is then so, I don't know, they come up with saying, so if it's secure or if it's comparable to proprietary software, and stuff like this, so nobody will ever say you are only allowed to procure open source or free software, but they will come up with something, and then it's on us to fix loopholes. So for example, what could be an idea is to add an oversight by the Court of Auditors who say, was this really like a reasonable spending of money, stuff like this. So it will be mainly about this. So it's unlikely that we will get a law saying public money, public code, but it's more likely that we will get a law which is saying open source first, and then we add some criteria around to make sure that it's really happening. And that's one of the main tasks, so fixing loopholes.
Thank you.
Yeah.